the issues affecting us in our daily lives now in Europeans.
Here is a harsh land bypassed by so many of the developments in history. Yet now, Extremadura, one of Europe's poorest regions, has taken its future in hand to ensure history is not repeated. Deep in Spain, bordering Portugal, Extremadura is economically the fifth poorest region in the European Union. But today it is the world leader in using free computer software, or freeware. A computer revolution is in progress. This developer feels it's justified to say revolution because what's happening here has never been done. Adapting in the Spanish language a user-friendly version of the LinEx operating system, Debian, to a region and installing the result in all its schools. This Helsinki-based freeware expert developing Debian from Linux works at the very heart of Extremadura's information project. It's been called the European alternative to Microsoft. The region is bypassing the American computer giant by adapting the best known of the operating systems which you don't have to pay for. Why Linux? Its biggest advantage is it's free, so anyone can use the basic program as they like. Errors can be corrected faster. It can be adapted to our needs. There's no paying someone in California when you make changes. I just call a software engineer here and he does it. There are far more people developing it, and it's less vulnerable to virus attacks. Extremadura's version of Linux it calls LinEx. It contains several programs which a team is constantly readapting to suit the region's administration, but any person can modify the software without having to ask permission or pay for it. It's a bonanza, explains the official in charge of education, science and technology. Human beings look for liberty, knowledge, to further their own plans. For me, the balance is shifting towards freeware, and it's going to come out on top worldwide. I don't know exactly when, but it's obvious that people or companies can exploit this freedom and advance their own interests in a much bigger way with open source or modifiable code. The Microsoft Windows operating system runs in 96% of the computers in the world. Linux, however, is making inroads, undermining that domination. Cities such as Munich in Germany and Nottingham in England are using freeware. And India, Argentina, Uruguay and Brazil have made contact with Extremadura. Here is one of their coordinators.
Trabalharmos na lógica do software livre, que é na lógica do compartilhamento do conhecimento.
Our mindset is one of sharing knowledge. The work Extremadura is doing will be useful for Brazilians, and what we come up with in Brazil could also serve Extremadura. LinEx is part of a larger whole. In 1996, the region took stock of the risks that the internet could become a new factor of inequality. The authorities calculated that the service providers would have no commercial interest in swiftly bringing broadband access all the way to the small communities that more than half the population in Extremadura live in. So the authorities created a regional intranet, the first of its kind in Europe. The network has 1,400 access points, notably the high schools. During this summer break, 112 schools were wired up, putting Extremadura in first place in Europe in terms of the number of computer terminals available to students. Equipped with 66,000 of the things, 2 students can share at any time by a comfortable margin. The EU average is 1 computer for 8 students. It's time for history class in the village of Calamonte, population 6,000. An average room. The blackboard is still here, but the desks are all lit up. The teacher asks his pupils to find answers on the internet. There is a much more intense dialogue with them now. The teacher's role is no longer just to impart knowledge. He's a guide, an information seeker who helps the pupils. But they are the ones building their own education. The teacher can see what each learner is looking at online on the screen at his desk, and he can actively click onto the student's screen to help. It's more fun learning with a computer than a book. And searching all the time means we can learn a lot more. Without a computer, I'd be limited to encyclopedias. That's slower. This is simpler. Almost the whole contents of the internet are on offer, plus the region's educational system websites, including material put together by the teachers. It's a huge work-sharing resource. Moving on to another school, the oldest in the regional capital Mérida, is also fully hooked up. But there are some difficulties which all the equipment and the 25 kilometers of cabling have more trouble solving, one of the heads tells us. The main problem is the teachers who have never used a computer before. Those who have aren't intimidated. What changes is the system, that's all. LinEx is here too. It saves the government 20 million euros in licensing fees, which is what it would have to pay for a system such as Windows. LinEx is not an isolated product. It came from a whole strategy. LinEx is the tool we're using to transform Extremadura. Part of that strategy is the new knowledge centers, spreading the new technology into neighborhoods. A 69-year-old surfing the internet has got to know LinEx by now. Then there's a 6-year-old.
Como se me ponga a todo, pierdo.
She can't come on her own, so her mother's here too. She created a site herself for children. The LinEx mascot is the stork, the most emblematic of the region's birds, a sign, some say, of the heights attainable with freeware. And that's all from this edition of Europeans.